Hello, my name's Jeremy, and if you're watching this video, it's probably because you've been diagnosed with either labyrinthitis or vestibular neuritis. One of the things that really helped me when I was diagnosed with vestibular neuritis was doing research and finding other people's videos on YouTube, kind of hearing their stories and what they went through and kind of the symptoms made me feel more at ease and kind of just less, I don't know, crazy. The symptoms I was experiencing, I just had nothing to compare to. I've never experienced anything like this before. And the recovery process for it has been very long. So if you're experiencing this, I'm sorry. It really sucks, especially at the beginning. I'm in 6 weeks now. But for the first 2 weeks, I couldn't get out of bed. And whenever I tried to, I would just have the sensation of spinning and now what I believe to be vertigo, or what everyone's described to me. Like I said, I've never had those symptoms before, so I didn't have anything to compare it to, but it's horrible. So I'll kind of tell you how mine came on. Mine came on super quick. And pretty prolifically. I was driving home from jiu-jitsu 6 weeks ago on a Saturday. I had just done a pretty intense practice and sweat a lot. I was pretty dehydrated, but with all intention of hydrating on the way home. I was drinking water and just started to feel kind of funky on the way home. That being said, the week that led up to this, I did feel like I was fighting something, but it was nothing that I didn't feel like I couldn't power through. In hindsight, I kind of wish I would have listened to my body a little more and rested and just, I knew I was feeling fatigued and definitely fighting something. Now, I do work out a lot. I do train a lot. Like I said, I do jiu-jitsu quite often. And so I just kind of powered through. I've done this before when I felt sick, and actually sweating has kind of helped me out. So I did this time as well. On the way home, I was on the highway and I started to feel kind of funky. My vision started to go blurry, and my eyes were having a hard time focusing. So I pulled off an off-ramp and had the intention of taking a back road to my house that was just less traffic. As I pulled off, my spatial awareness kind of started to go, and I actually overshot the stop sign that was right there. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, that was weird. What's going on? So went about a block more and started to have the sensation that I was about to pass out. It's the only thing I can really equate it to. Now looking back on it and having several more episodes to compare it to, definitely was what people would describe as vertigo. I was extremely dizzy, very kind of lethargic and put off as far as spatial awareness. Couldn't kind of figure out what was going on with my mind and my eyes and my ability to handle my car. So I pulled over, had my son with me, and I told him that I feel like I'm going to pass out. And that if I did, he should call 911. Luckily, some bystanders pulled over as well. We didn't have much of a shoulder on this side road, and so they pulled over with us and got out and helped. I was having a lot of lethargy too and brain fog. I just didn't know what was happening to me, and I think I also was having, well, I know now that I was having some panic as well, just trying to figure out what was happening to me, which was causing shortness of breath. My chest felt heavy and very anxious as well. So I ended up going to the ER, long or the short on that one. In the ER, they thought actually that I was having a stroke. So they took me in, hit me with everything, labs right away, heart right away, take a look at my heart, my oxygen level, and hit me with some IV hydration. Figured out I wasn't having a stroke. Labs came up clear. Heart was doing great. Oxygen was good. So they told me they thought I was having either an allergic reaction to some antibiotics I had been on. I was on some sulfa antibiotics, which I've never had before, due to a groin strike. They thought I possibly had a bacteria infection, which I found out later I didn't. Due to the strike, I had been experiencing some pain in my testicle, and they thought I may have bacteria infection, basically. So, so they told me that I was dehydrated. They shipped me home and said, you know, chill out. This all should go away. Hydrate and rest. So I did that. Now, even though the initial spell of dizziness dissipated some, I never and haven't since then really gotten rid of the feeling of being unbalanced and just kind of off as far as my equilibrium and my vision and my ability to determine spatial awareness is how I would describe it. Now, after being home, anytime that I would try and get out of the bed and kind of walk around the house, I was able to move around a little bit, but I would get really dizzy. I would not have as extreme of vertigo as I had during that initial episode, but pretty crappy. And then along with that, also the anxiety and panic that would come. My chest would feel heavy. And then my vision was pretty blurry in both eyes. And what I described to my wife, what was happening with my eyes, and still is a little bit, is that my eyes don't seem to be able to focus the way that they normally would. It almost feels like when you have a cell phone and you're trying to get the camera to take a picture and it won't focus on something, so it just kind of does that thing where it's like zzz, zzz, zzz. That's how my eyes feel, that they were just trying to focus, and especially objects moving or while I was moving was extremely difficult. So having those two together, me moving towards something and something moving towards me at that time, would just make my head feel like it was going to explode. And then also just not being able to shake the brain fog. So about a week went by, and then my wife talked me into getting in the car and trying to just go for a drive and get out. So got in the car, heading down the road, and had another, the focus thing just took over and had another episode of very extreme vertigo. Ended up going back to the ER. I told my wife, I just don't feel right. We gotta, there's something really wrong with me. So went to the ER, and luckily the doctor there had kind of a better idea of what was going on with me. So he said that he believes that my symptoms were right in line with something called labryinthitis. I did have ringing in my ears as well. That was a big thing. So he said that we needed to do a CT scan just to make sure that there were no brain tumors or anything like that going on. So hit that. CT came up clear. So now I have a CT, blood work, heart work, and oxygen, and I'm hydrated. So he said, yeah, this sounds just like labyrinthitis, something I had never heard of. So he told me I need to follow up with my primary care physician and also my ENT, or an ENT. So I ended up getting into an ENT about 2 days later, which I'm fortunate to do. Or to have been able to do that. And he said, the ENT said right away that my symptoms are in line with that, but there are also some other things that it could be as well, some more sinister stuff like MS. So he wanted me to get an MRI with and without contrast to kind of rule out that stuff. So did that. That took about a week for me to be able to get in there. So during that week period, I was bedridden again, or still. I mean, I just couldn't do anything really. Anytime that I would kind of get up and move around the house, I would just get extreme dizziness. I was luckily able to work from home during this time, so I was doing quite a bit of computer work and making phone calls, and I actually wasn't able to put headphones in during that, and even just talking into my phone and having the vibration of the phone going through my ear would throw me off. Staring at the computer screen and concentrating, my eyes were not being able to focus very well, and that was really hard. So got it out that week, got the MRI results back, and they came up clear. So my ENT told me I need to follow up with an ophthalmologist, and the next step was to follow up with a neurologist. So I have that on the books. I followed up with an ophthalmologist already. Everything's clear with my eyes, even though my left eye. So the vision in my right eye has come back and is pretty crisp now. The vision in my left eye is still blurry, and I'm still having a hard time focusing. I can see out of my left eye. I've never lost my vision, but it's just my ability to focus is what's off, especially when I'm moving. So long and the short, I still have my appointment with my neurologist. Every week has gotten just a touch better. After 2 weeks, I decided that, and my ENT told me that if this is vestibular neuritis, which he thinks it is, that there's really the best thing I can do is kind of just push forward and do as much as I can, and then also follow up with a physical therapist that specializes in vestibular therapy. So I did that as well. I'm on my second session of vestibular therapy today, actually, and the exercises that they've been giving me have helped a little bit. They do seem to be making a little bit of an improvement. To be honest with you, the first couple days that I did them, they made me extremely dizzy. So if you're doing that, you definitely will probably have some side effects right out the gate, but I do believe that it will help in the long run, and have heard from other people that it does. So I'm going to continue doing that. So 2 weeks, I forced myself to go to work. Still couldn't drive, and still can't drive at week 6, but was able to hitch rides with coworkers. I actually, in that first week, was only able to get out 2 days. The other thing about this has been the extreme fatigue. I've been so tired every day. My brain is working so hard just for me to be able to walk down the hall. And those first 2 days at work, especially with other people walking around, walking longer distances, focusing on the computer and paperwork and all that kind of stuff was just very difficult. So I got it out 2 days and then just crashed again. The vertigo was coming and going, but the episodes were not nearly as severe as they were before. So rested up, got into week 4, and actually had to go out of town for a conference. My ENT assured me that I'd be fine going out of town, and I actually had to fly, which was an experience in its own when you have vertigo. I actually did okay, and one of the people that I work with is a physical therapist, so he was actually sitting next to me, which made me feel a lot better. And he kind of talked me through some just things to focus on, and how to relax in that situation. And I actually had a pretty good flight. As the plane started to bank to land, I did have a pretty decent spell of vertigo, but it subsided pretty quickly after we landed. So got it out the conference, but the thing that was the hardest during that time period when I was starting to get a touch better as far as the vertigo symptoms go, is the fatigue was hanging, and the brain fog was hanging very, very tough. So it took about 4 weeks before the fatigue really started to lift to the point where I'm able to kind of make it through a full day. Now, that being said, a full day for me now is much different than a full day for me previously. I crash around 2 o'clock, and then basically just survive the last 2 hours of the day or 3 hours of the day at work, and then get home and am just exhausted. So week 6 now, the feeling of vertigo and fatigue has subsided somewhat, but it's still there. And that's the hardest thing about all of this, is that since my initial vertigo or dizzy episode, it's never gone away. It has subsided, but it's still there. It just hangs out. So you always feel just discombobulated. You always feel off. You always feel just not 100%. Spatial awareness is always off. The encouraging thing is now I can walk longer distances, which is exciting. And I actually was able to go to jiu-jitsu a couple times, which if anybody knows about jiu-jitsu, it's very, it's like wrestling. You are moving your body all different ways and rolling around and that kind of thing. I have stayed away from those activities at large, but I've been able to kind of participate in the just technique portion of the class, which has been awesome, to see my friends and stuff again and have their support as I continue to recover. I'm in week 6 now. Like I've said, last weekend I was feeling pretty good, and actually hadn't had a vertigo episode for, a big vertigo episode for about a week. And then it kind of came back on Friday, which sucked. And then the fatigue kind of came back on Friday, which sucked. It has been about a week since then, and everybody I've talked to that has gone through this has kind of expressed the same thing, that they have kind of ebbed and flowed. It's kind of come and gone, and for some people it completely reactivated after they did start feeling better. For me, it wasn't as extreme, but it was discouraging because I had felt like I was making such great progress towards this, towards recovering to 100%. So I'm at the end of week 6 right now. I'll be starting week 7 soon. I have been connected with a friend of a friend who just got over the same thing as me, which is surprising. I felt really bad for her, but it was really encouraging to hear her story as well. She has recovered 100%, but her symptoms mirrored my symptoms almost identically. So it's encouraging to know that everybody that I know that's had the same thing has recovered 100%. Now, the recovery time seems to be different with everyone. For her, it was 3 months. For someone else that I know, it was 4 months. I've heard a lot of stories on the internet about, extreme cases of over a year, if not longer. For me, I do seem to be on a fast track as far as the amount of time that I was confined to my house, and now my ability to be out. I am out functioning now. I'm working and just kind of taking it day by day. It's not easy, but I'm pushing through, and also being consistent with my vestibular therapy. So that's the one piece of advice I would have to people and have heard from people so far, is that push through as much as you can. Um, Having this and knowing that it's swelling in your inner ear and not like classic vertigo where positional things will trigger it more than anything. For me, it's more of the movement and the lack of my eyes and my brain and everything to work together. Um, the more that I've challenged myself and kind of pushed myself to get out there, even though that's been very difficult, the quicker I seem to be getting better. So I am and would encourage people to kind of push. You know, I'm not a medical professional, so I have no idea, you know, overall as far as medical advice, but this is kind of just what's worked for me. I will make another video in a couple weeks to kind of let people know where I'm at in my recovery. I'll be honest with you, today was a difficult day for me, in that I'm just kind of tired of being tired, and just want to get back to doing all the things I love to do, you know, surfing, jiu-jitsu, running, playing outside with my son, you know, those kinds of things. I'm pushing myself to do more and more of those things again, but also having to really listen to my body and my fatigue level and deal with the dizziness as it comes. So I'll keep you guys in the loop. Thank you guys, everybody else who has made videos like this. It was one of the things that really did help me when I first started going through this, hearing other people's story and knowing that I'm not the only one who's experienced this has been extremely encouraging, and just kind of helped me power through some of the harder moments. So thank you guys. I'll talk to you soon.